I was with my friend at a bar that night, just the two of us. It was one of those old, almost forgotten places on the edge of town. The kind with exposed brick walls, flickering neon signs, and a jukebox that hadn't worked in years. I'd never really been drawn to bars alone, but my friend had insisted, saying it would be fun. I've been feeling restless lately, tired of staring at my apartment walls, and for some reason, it seemed like the right idea to escape, even if just for a few hours. The place was nearly empty when we got there, which immediately gave it a strange, heavy feeling. It was late, around midnight, and the usual crowd had already left. Only a handful of scattered people were nursing drinks, heads bowed over conversation or their phones. The lighting was dim, just enough to make you see, but not enough to make you feel safe. My friend suggested we sit at the bar, so we did, and we ordered a couple of beers. The bartender was an older guy, quiet, with a kind of wary look that made me think he'd seen too many things he didn't want to talk about. I didn't ask. Some nights, ignorance feels safer. We drank in silence for a few minutes, listening to the faint hum of the lights and the occasional clink of glassware. Then I noticed it. The mirror behind the bar, the only one in the room, seemed off. Not because it was cracked or dirty, but because it reflected something that wasn't there. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the dim light, maybe a shadow, falling oddly. But then I realized my friend had leaned forward, laughing at something, and I could see two figures reflected in the mirror, standing right behind him. I blinked. Did you see that?" I whispered. He looked at me, confused. "See what?" I pointed at the mirror, trying not to make my voice too loud. He followed my gaze, and I watched his face go pale. I don't see anyone," he said, his voice trembling slightly. That's when I started to feel it, the kind of fear that isn't about loud noises or obvious danger. It's the kind that sits in your chest, tightens around your ribs, and makes your hands cold no matter how warm the room is. I looked back at the mirror. The figures were still there, tall, featureless shadows with glowing eyes. Not human eyes, exactly, but deep, dark holes that seemed to pierce straight through me. I turned slowly to see if anyone else was in the bar. Empty. The seats, the floor, the tables, all completely empty. Nothing moved except the occasional flicker of the neon signs. I wanted to tell my friend to leave, to get out of there, but when I looked at him again, he was frozen, staring at the mirror as if hypnotized. And then I noticed the fog. It started at the top of the mirror, wispy and curling downward, like someone had breathed onto the glass. But the air in the bar was cold and dry. Nobody had been near the mirror except us. I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun around. My friend was trying to pull me toward the door. "We need to go. Now." I nodded, but just as we moved, I glanced back over my shoulder. The figures were closer. Their glowing eyes, impossibly black, were staring at me. And then one of them smiled. Not a normal smile, but a wide, unnatural grin, stretching the shadows of its face. My stomach dropped. My throat closed. I couldn't breathe. We rushed toward the exit. My friend fumbled with the door, panic rising in both of us. I could feel it behind us, the cold, oppressive weight of it pressing in. I heard the mirror behind the bar crack, just a faint snapping sound, and then silence. We got outside into the parking lot, breathing heavily, shaking, trying to convince ourselves we were imagining things. But the fear didn't leave. I couldn't shake the image of those black, unblinking eyes. I kept expecting to see them appear behind us in the lot or follow us to our cars. Neither of us spoke until we were safely in the car. Then my friend finally whispered. I saw it too. The mirror, there was someone behind us. I nodded. I had no words. I just wanted to get home. That night, sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the mirror. I could feel those eyes watching me, waiting. I imagined them moving through my apartment, standing silently in corners, just watching. I kept thinking maybe it was a trick of the mind, a reflection distorted by the dim light. But my friend had seen it too. A week later, I went back to the bar. I thought maybe if I faced it, if I saw the mirror again, I could put it behind me. The place looked normal this time. The lights flickered a little, but nothing else. I even approached the bar and looked at the mirror. Nothing. Clean. Empty. No shadows. No glowing eyes. I tried to convince myself it had been stress overthinking, a combination of too much alcohol and too little sleep. But then I noticed something in the corner of the glass, a faint, oily smudge shaped exactly like two eyes. I rubbed it off, thinking nothing of it, but my stomach churned. I didn't linger. I left immediately. It wasn't until months later, when I told the story to a friend, that I realized I had never actually seen them walk away. I had never seen them leave. I didn't hear footsteps, the door opening, anything. One moment they were there, and the next gone. Not like they left, but like they had never been there at all. I've gone back to that bar since, sometimes with friends, sometimes alone. The mirror hangs in the same spot. The bar hasn't changed much, but I haven't seen them again. Not directly, but sometimes, late at night, when I close my eyes, I can feel those eyes watching from behind some unseen reflection, waiting for the next time I look. It was one night, one brief, terrifying encounter, but it's left a permanent mark on me. I don't go to bars alone anymore. I don't look in mirrors when it's quiet. And sometimes, when I catch my own reflection in a dark window at night, I swear I see the same hollow stare looking back. I had been driving around aimlessly that Friday night, trying to shake off a week that felt like it had been designed just to break me. Work was exhausting, my friends were busy, and honestly, I was a little lonely. I knew I shouldn't be wandering alone, but I couldn't resist the pull of the dimly lit dive bar at the edge of town. The kind of place that promised anonymity and the possibility of something unexpected. The bar itself was easy to miss if you weren't looking. Its neon sign flickered half-heartedly, buzzing faintly like it was ready to give up. Inside, the air smelled of old beer, cigarette smoke, and something else, something faintly metallic, almost like blood, though I told myself it was just the bar's age catching up with it. It was mostly empty when I got there. One or two people at the bar, a pair of guys huddled in a corner booth, talking too loudly and laughing too sharp. The rest of the tables were scattered with glasses and sticky rings, as if the patrons had simply evaporated into thin air. I slid onto a stool, feeling the stickiness beneath me, and tried not to notice how quiet it was. The jukebox was off, the only sound coming from the slow hum of the lights above and the faint crackle from a corner radio. I ordered a whiskey neat. As I waited, I scanned the bar, tried to shake the feeling that I was being watched. It was silly. I had been to dive bars before, and I knew the tension you feel when a place as quiet isn't necessarily real. But something in the shadows of that room made my stomach tighten. Then I saw him. He was leaning against the far wall, near the pool table that had clearly seen better days. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark hoodie that swallowed most of his frame. I couldn't see his face clearly at first. The hood shadowed him, and he was still enough to blend into the darkness. But then he moved slightly, and I caught the edge of his jaw, pale and sharp, and a stare that felt like it cut straight through me. I wanted to look away, to pretend I hadn't noticed, but I couldn't. There was something about the way he was standing there, completely still, that felt unnatural. The bar was quiet, the jukebox off, the room empty except for him and me. And yet, I could feel him watching me. I tried to distract myself, taking a sip of whiskey, forcing my eyes to wander elsewhere. But every time I glanced up, he was still there. Same spot, same stance, same terrifying stillness. Minutes passed, though it could have been hours. Time seemed warped in that bar. Then he moved, just a step toward the pool table, and then another. Each movement deliberate, silent, like he didn't want me to hear him. I felt my throat tighten. My hands gripped the edge of the bar. I told myself it was fine. Probably just some guy having a late-night drink alone. But then he spoke. Hey. His voice was low, calm, but there was a weight behind it, a sharp edge that made my skin crawl. I forced a laugh. Hi, I said, trying to keep it casual. Do you play? He asked, motioning toward the pool table. I hesitated. Normally, I would have said no, but something, curiosity, stupidity, I don't know, made me nod. He grinned, just slightly, just enough to make the skin on the back of my neck prickle. We started a game. I could feel his eyes on me every second, and it wasn't the friendly, competitive gaze you see with pool partners. It was something else. Calculating. Cold. It made me want to leave, to run, but I couldn't. Something about the intensity of him held me there. The game went on. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't great either. He missed easy shots, and I won a few rounds. Still, he didn't seem frustrated. He just smiled, that faint, unsettling smile, and racked the balls again. Then he asked casually, "Do you come here often?" I laughed nervously. "Not really. Just tonight. Alone." "Yes," I said, though the word felt heavier than it should. He didn't answer, just leaned over the table, his face still partially hidden by the hood. "Do you live alone?" My stomach sank. Yes." He nodded slowly, like he had known all along. The air around us felt thicker. I could hear the faint hum of the neon sign behind the bar, but nothing else. The other patrons seemed like they had vanished completely. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself he was harmless, but my instincts were screaming otherwise. I could feel it deep in my chest. This was wrong. Then he reached out and lightly touched the pool cue in my hand. "You're good," he said. "Better than most." I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Thanks." The air between us shifted. He stopped smiling. His eyes, now fully visible under the dim light, seemed darker, almost unnaturally so. And then he said something that froze me in place. "I know where you live." The words weren't loud, but they hit me like a sledgehammer. My heart raced. I wanted to laugh, to brush it off, but I couldn't. I tried to change the subject, to ask him about pool, anything, but he didn't respond. He just racked the balls silently, deliberately, like he was giving me time to panic. I could feel the room closing in. The shadows behind him seemed to deepen, stretch, almost move on their own. My hand shook. I couldn't breathe normally. I kept telling myself to calm down, that he was just another creep. But something told me he was more than that. Then he left. Not in a hurry, not angrily. Just gone. No sound of the door opening, no jingle of the bell above it. He vanished. Just like that. I left shortly after, too shaken to even finish my drink. I walked to my car, heart pounding, eyes scanning every corner of the dark street outside the bar. Empty. Silent. Safe, at least for now. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was out there. Watching. Waiting. Weeks passed. I tried to forget about that night. I told friends it was nothing, just some strange encounter in a dive bar. But I couldn't stop checking my locks. I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder when I walked alone at night. And then one night I saw it. A shadow in the distance, moving slowly, deliberately, almost gliding. Two glowing points in the dark. Eyes. I knew immediately, and I knew without thinking that it was him. Or something like him. Watching. Waiting. I never went back to that bar. Not alone. Not at night. And sometimes, when I'm at home, I catch a glimpse of a dark figure in the corner of my eye, just beyond the reach of the light. I tell myself it's nothing. But deep down, I know that the fear I felt that night didn't leave. It's still out there, waiting. I usually work the late shift at a small, off-the-beaten-path bar just outside town. It's the kind of place that doesn't attract much attention. Scratch tables, flickering lights, the smell of old beer lingering in the air like it never leaves. The regulars are mostly quiet, middle-aged people who come to drink alone or in pairs, and I like it that way. I prefer the quiet nights to the chaos of bigger bars downtown. That Thursday, though, it felt different from the moment I walked in. The street was emptier than usual, the neon sign buzzing faintly, more erratic than normal. Something about it made my skin crawl, but I shrugged it off. Maybe I was just tired. Inside, the place was mostly empty. A couple of people at the bar, a pair of guys in a corner booth laughing a little too loudly, like they were trying to convince themselves of something. I grabbed my apron, stocked the shelves, and started preparing for the night. Around 10:30, a man walked in. I noticed him immediately, not because he was loud or flashy, but because of how off he seemed. He was tall, broad, with dark hair falling into his eyes, wearing a hoodie that was too large for him and a leather jacket that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. He didn't sit. He didn't order immediately. He just stood there near the bar, staring. I tried to ignore him, telling myself he was just another stranger, another late-night customer. But the feeling in my gut told me otherwise. There was something about the way he stood that wasn't normal, like he was studying me, memorizing the space, measuring everything. I went over, trying to keep my tone casual. "Can I get you something to drink?" He didn't answer right away, just stared at me. The kind of stare that makes your chest tighten without realizing it. Finally, he muttered, "A double shot of Jaeger." I poured the shot and set it in front of him, watching as he tossed a few crumpled bills on the counter. Not unusual. Some people still paid in cash, but the way he did it with a cold precision made me uneasy. Then he said it. "I know you, Kevin." My heart skipped a beat. That wasn't my name, but it didn't matter. The way he said it, the tone in his voice, it made every hair on my body stand on end. I think you have me confused," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. He didn't respond, just stared. And then, almost casually, he said, "I know what you did before." I froze. My stomach sank. My mind raced, trying to recall anything at all that could explain this. I couldn't think of anything. I hadn't wronged anyone, at least not in a way that would matter to someone like this. Then he turned and walked toward the elevators. I wanted to yell, to stop him, to demand answers, but I didn't. I was on the clock. I couldn't just abandon my post. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I couldn't focus. Every time I turned my head, I half expected to see him somewhere in the bar. By the end of my shift, I was exhausted, mentally and physically. I closed up, locked the doors, and drove home, trying to tell myself it was over. But it wasn't. I woke up in the middle of the night to a strange feeling, the kind where your body knows something isn't right before your mind catches up. My room was dark, silent, but my gut was screaming. I stayed still for a moment, listening. Then I saw it, a shadow in the corner of my room, just standing there, motionless, watching. I want to scream, to run, but I forced myself to stay still, pretending to be asleep. My mind raced. How'd he get in? I had locked all the doors. Windows were closed. There was no sign of forced entry. I counted to 3 and bolted out of bed, ready to confront him. But when I lunged, he moved fast, unnaturally fast, and bolted for the door. Something clattered on the floor as he went, and I froze, realizing it was one of my kitchen knives. I chased after him to the front door, but it was wide open. Whoever he was, he had vanished. I didn't dare run outside. I slammed the door, locked it, and called the police. They searched the house, the yard, but found nothing. No footprints, no sign of entry, nothing. Weeks went by. I tried to go back to normal, but the feeling of being watched never left. Shadows in the corners, flickering lights, the faintest creak on the stairs. Every little sound set my heart racing. Then a month later, I was back at the bar. It was busy that night, loud and chaotic, the kind of night where you're thankful for the noise to drown out your thoughts. I was bartending, serving drinks, when I noticed them, an elderly couple sitting in a booth in the far corner. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but as I glanced back, I realized they weren't moving. Not ordering, not talking, just staring at the wall. Something about them made my stomach twist. I approached, asking if they wanted anything to drink or eat. They didn't respond. The man's face was pale, eyes sunken, almost lifeless. The woman's gaze never left the wall. My heart thudded in my chest. I walked away, pretending to be busy, but I kept glancing back. Minutes passed, and suddenly they were staring directly at me. My blood ran cold. Then, just as quickly as they appeared, they were gone. I asked my co-worker about them later. She had no idea what I was talking about. She hadn't seen anyone like that. I laughed it off, but inside I knew what I saw. When I left that night, I saw them again, 2 dark figures under a streetlight, watching. I didn't wait. I locked my doors and drove away, my hands trembling. I've never seen them since, but I can't forget. Every time I'm alone, every time I walk into a quiet room, I half expect to see them, waiting, watching. And sometimes, I swear I feel him, the first man, standing just beyond the edge of the light, smiling that faint, terrifying smile. I don't know why he chose me. I don't know what he wants. I only know that some nights, I can still feel him, just beyond the darkness, waiting for the perfect moment to return.